very special guest, Stan Lee, everybody.
I wonder if you might talk about Joan.
You don't wonder. You know damn well if you ask me to talk about something, I got to talk about it, right? About what?
Like, you've been married for...
Oh, my entire wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
See, it's very important to make up little expressions. Never, I'll give you a tip on how to be as disliked as I am. Never say the obvious. Never say what people expect to hear. Say something stupid. Nobody knows it's stupid. They'll laugh and you're ahead of the game. Go ahead.
as far as like, because you've been in comics your whole life, and you've been married to
No,
Joan.
not my whole life. When I was 3 years old, I wasn't in comics. I mean,
That's
you gotta
true.
watch what you say. Be accurate, because these people will
They're
poke holes in what you
recording.
say.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's being recorded, for God's sake.
I've always had a question for you with regards to when you met Joan. It was a blind date at a party, right?
Yes, but it wasn't with Joan.
But you were going there. No, he was going there to meet one of your army buddies was introducing you to another girl, right? And you
Sort of, yeah.
And you happened to.
All right, I'll tell it.
Okay.
He rambles. Have you
But-
noticed
but
that?
here's
I'm
the thing.
interviewed by a rambler. I said, Joan,
Yeah.
what happened was I had gotten out of the Army, and what do when you get out of the Army? You look for women. In fact, you do that while you're in the Army if you have a chance. So anyway, a friend of mine said, I know this great model at a hat model place. And I told her about you and blah, 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 so I was supposed to go up and meet her. Now, in those days, women wore hats, and hat models had to be as pretty as hell because they were photographing your face with a hat. And usually the rest of them wasn't bad either. So I was kind of eager to meet this girl. I think her name was Betty, I don't remember. And I walked up and I knocked on the door. And the door was opened by a vision. And I have to go back and tell you this. I used to draw when I was young. Loved to draw pictures of beautiful girls. You know, you drew your dream girl. And there was one face I always drew, a certain kind of face. To me, that was the most beautiful a girl could be. So I knocked on the door, and it was opened up, and there was the face I had been drawing since I was a little kid. And what made it even better, I'm an Anglophile. I love everything English, starting with Sherlock Holmes. And she was English, and in that English voice, with that gorgeous face, yes, may I help you? And I think I blurted something out like, I love you. And she had the figure to go with it. So anyway, I never met Betty, but I took Joni, that was who it was. I took her to lunch, and we got married shortly after, and that was about 62 years ago. I may be leaving her, though, because she's losing that English accent each year.
Yeah, 6 weeks later, Joan always says she was in Reno.
She was what?
She was in Reno. You guys were getting married.
Oh, let me tell you about that. I forgot to mention, she was already married. She had met some army officer while in England, and she had had an argument with a guy she really liked in England. So to show him, this was the kind of emotional girl she was, she married the army officer to show that guy, came over to this country and said, what have I done? And then she met me, so obviously it had to have a happy ending. But I had to send her to Reno to get a divorce, because in Reno you were able to get a 6-week divorce. It was the fastest way to get a divorce. So I sent her there, and every few days I'd get a letter from her, Dear Stan. One day after the 5th week, I get a letter, Dear Jack. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I knew my name wasn't Jack. And something told me I'd better fly out to Reno. So I was in a hurry to get there. I figured this is an emergency. And I had never booked passage on a plane before. I never bought a plane ticket before. So I run into an office where they sold plane tickets. Said, give me a ticket on the first plane out of here to Reno. I shouldn't have said that. I should have said, a plane that will get to Reno the first. The first plane out was a milk run. It took 3 stops to get out of New York State. And it took like 15 hours to anyway, I finally got to Reno. And there is Joan waiting for me with about 5 guys with her, standing around her, whom she had met, friends. Every one of them looked like John Wayne. Big, macho guys with jeans, and I mean, they were so rugged, and they all looked like oil millionaires who had their own ranches, and they probably rustled cows and all those things that people do. And I get off the plane. I've just come from New York. I'm wearing my little pork pie hat and my little scarf and a pair of gloves and my shiny shoes. And Joan said, when I looked at you, I came so close to thinking, what am I getting into? But luckily, so anyway, she got her divorce from a judge in one room, and then we went to the next room, and the same judge married us. So it was too late for all those John Waynes, thank God. And what happened then, you had to have a witness. So there was another couple getting married, so they said, would we be their witness? We said, sure. Would they be our witness? Sure. And at the end of the ceremony took 3 minutes. The 4 of us were so sentimental. We'll meet once a year and we'll be friends for life, and this is so good. We never saw him again, never heard from him, forgot about him 10 minutes later. That's the story of Joan.
All right,
sorry
thank
it
you.
took so long. No, I'm not. We got through another 10 minutes.
62 years later. Not bad. Well, let's open it up to the audience. Does anybody?
I didn't tell you another thing about Joan.
Okay. Actually, tell us about the obituaries after whatever you were going to tell us.
That's what it was, the obituaries.
Of
I had a
odd
lot
job.
I'm so afraid of the questions. I had a lot of jobs before I got into comics, and one of them I was an usher at the Rivoli Theater in New York, Times Square. Now that was, in those days, being an usher at a Times Square theater was a big deal. It was like being a West Pointer. Before you reported for work, you lined up, the manager checked you. If everything on your uniform wasn't perfect, you got a gig. It was terrible. Anyway, we each had our own aisle. And the funny thing, if somebody came in the theater and you wanted them to come down your aisle, you had to go like this. This way, please. It had to be that gesture. This way, please. Well, the first week I hit myself in my chin. It's hard to learn that. You try to do it fast and I would hit myself. Now, look how good I am at it. So anyway, Mrs. Roosevelt came into the theater, the president's wife, Eleanor Roosevelt. And all us ushers were so nervous, and sure enough, I get her in my aisle. I think she liked the way I did that. And she starts walking, and I'm standing there. This is the president's wife. I got my shoulders back and my chest out, my little flashlight shining. This way, Mrs. President. I didn't know what the hell to call her. And I'm walking down the aisle trying to impress her, and some son of a gun had his leg stuck out in the aisle. I trip over it. I fall on my face. The next thing I know, she's helping lift me up. Are you all right, Sonny? Oh, God. So that was my experience as an usher. So I quit being an usher. Then I got a job writing obituaries, I think for the Associated Press. But I was writing obituaries for living people, because when you're famous, they have your obituary all written so that when you die, it can be right there in the paper. They don't have to sit down and start writing it. That's how you know you're famous. I hope I have an obituary all written somewhere. And I got sick of writing about living people in the past tense, so I stopped doing the obituaries. Then I got a job as an office boy for the second largest, I don't even know if this is in the, is this in my documentary? If it isn't, we got to go back and shoot whole new scenes.
We'll add sequences. For the what? The second largest what?
Trouser manufacturer.
Oh, yeah. It's in there.
Now, they were terrible. They never got to learn my name. There were 2 office boys. There was a guy who was there longer than me, so he had seniority. But when they wanted anything, there were salesmen who sat in little cubicles, and the salesman would go, "Boy, And we both had to rush there and try to get there first. You know, get me a sandwich, sharpen my pencil, whatever they wanted. So for a few weeks, all I heard was, boy, boy, and I ran there. It was a humiliating job. And then I had to pick up the mail at the post office, and it was a big sack of mail. And I wasn't the strongest guy in the world. I had to lug it for blocks to where they were, but they didn't credit you for that time. That was before 9 in the morning, but I was only paid from 9 in the morning. But I didn't care, it was a job. But what happened was they fired me about 2 days before Christmas. They decided they had to cut down, and the other guy had been there first. I got so angry because I worked much harder than this other guy, that when they all left, and here's the one crime I've committed in my life, and I'm trusting you never to tell anybody about this. They had big boxes the size of coffins, and in those boxes they had what they called cutting tickets. Every pair of trousers had a cutting ticket, and they were sheets of like oak tag, very stiff paper, and they were squeezed into the coffins, and they had all the information about every pair of pants on every sheet of paper. And it was also my job to put those things in there every day. And these things were crowded in the coffins, and there were dozens of them. And I went home every night with my nails bleeding from doing that, and they fired me. So I came by on Sunday, and I overturned every coffin, and I scattered the papers. And that was the biggest criminal thing I have ever done in my life, and I'm proud of it. Excelsior!